Welcome, everybody. I want to call the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee to order. First item is call to the public. Selena McCollum, would you like to come up to the microphone?
My name's Selena McCollum, and I'm here to express concern about the drastic overthinning and sometimes clear cutting of our natural washes. I have folders for a number of you, and I have a letter in there explaining my concerns and also offering some solutions. I know I don't have much time, so I'd like to just talk with you briefly about the photos so you know what's going on with them. The first photo is a picture of natural wash. I took this in the wash that runs next to Grover's Park near 7th Avenue and south of Union Hills. The next photo is of a section of the same wash. And that wash, by the way, in case you're not familiar, is probably about as wide as a football field. So it's a very large wash. This section of wash, I would say, is largely clear cut. I am guessing because the city has told me that one of the main reasons they go in and clear cut the wash is to get rid of the vegetation so that homeless people don't have any place to make a camp. I'm assuming that maybe that's why this was done. One reason that I think that may be the case, and this would be this photo here, I've circled on the right-hand side a suitcase, and on the left-hand side a tree that was chopped down. It's disturbing to see this and seems unnecessary as a solution to that problem. This photo was taken in a section of wash which is to the west of 7th Avenue and north of Bell Road. It's very close to a charter school that's in that area. This wash was for many, many years until recently very similar to the natural wash photo, the first one I showed you. It's my understanding that once that property was purchased, the people that owned the school had concerns about the wash, and so they requested the city keep it very thinned out. So now this is basically how it's maintained. There are trees there, which is great, but basically no other vegetation in the bottom of the wash. That's bad for erosion. That provides no cover for animals and no place for quails to lay eggs. And then the last photo is a section of wash north of Greenway, south of Tierra Buena, and roughly at 13th Avenue. This wash was just demolished, I would say, in the last month or so. It used to be very similar to, again, the first photo I gave you of a natural wash. As you can see, there's basically no vegetation in the bottom of the wash, and very disappointing. So, again, I know I don't have much time. I could talk about this for hours.
I need you to wrap up.
Yes, but I would just request that this committee take a look at this issue and take some action to stop the destruction of our washes. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for coming down. Next is Jennifer Liccardo.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me the chance to speak. I'm coming to speak about my opposition and the opposition of my neighborhood to the proposed bike lanes on Missouri going from 24th Street to, I believe, 19th Avenue. I commute to work every day on the 51 and the 101, so I have to drive on Missouri every single day. And it's also, we live north of Missouri off 20th Street. So it's pretty much our way out to get to any of the businesses on Central. We really like to give our business to the local places on Central and Missouri. And it's really hard to even leave your house once you get home at 5:30 if you're going to be traveling back on Missouri towards downtown. We feel, biking is great, but lowering it to one lane each way on that street would just make it almost impossible for residents and people that live there to get anywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all the,
I can offer just a quick comment on that. We're not posted to talk about Missouri Avenue, but just for the sake of clarity, I think it would be helpful to explain that the city's no longer considering making changes to the lanes on Missouri Avenue for the purpose of bike lanes. We're looking at that full corridor and looking at different options, but not Missouri.
you made someone very happy on Valentine's Day. We will go to the consent items. Mario, I think you're
Yes.
pulling a couple.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, items 3 and 4 are both related to the South Central Light Rail extension and were posted for consent, but staff would like some additional time to work with the community and talk to council members to make sure that there's full information being provided on these. And so we would like to hold these until the next meeting in March.
Very good. Which leaves us item 2. Do I have a motion to approve this?
Move item number 2.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Meeting, it passes. Minutes of the meeting, I skipped right over that. Do I have a motion or correction for January 10th meeting?
Move the minutes of the meetings for January 10th, 2017.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. I also want to note that Vice Mayor Galicko is on the phone. I don't hear her baby, but we're listening closely.
Michael is here as well. We'll see
Good.
which items he wants to weigh in on.
I'm glad you have your backup there. Oh, there he is. Okay, any questions on item 5, 6, or 7? They are for information only.
Nope.
Okay, hearing none. Item 8 is also the 5-year capital improvement program. Anyone have any questions about that? Nope. 9 is the T2050 transportation programs. Hearing none. And the customer care and billing system update, which is on schedule and being tested, and so far so good, so keep your fingers crossed. Brings us to item 11. Marty?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. John Trujillo, Public Works Director, along with Deputy Public Works Director Felissa Washington Smith, are here to present on City Hall elevator rehabilitation. I should also mention Deputy City Manager Karen Peters is here, along with Denise Olson, our Chief Financial Officer. Karen?
Yes, good morning, members of the subcommittee. We're here to talk about a very important subject that affects the safety and security of employees and the public who use Phoenix City Hall every day. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. So go ahead, John, and introduce this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. As you know, this building was built around 93, 94. We haven't done any major upgrades to the elevators in this facility. And with that, these elevators, they've reached the life of, and I'm not saying they're unsafe, but they provide a lot of inconvenience due to entrapment. So we want to be a little proactive, and we would like to get approval to move forward and provide upgrades to the elevators at City Hall. With that, I will have Felissa Washington Smith. We'll go through the proposal and recommendations to move forward. And I also have Denise Olson here that will talk about financing options on how we can work this through as well.
As John said, we opened City Hall November 29, 1993. That is 24 years ago. And the elevators have evolved since then. So what I want to do is talk about some things that we are seeing. The elevators are obsolete, limited parts availability, and limited technical service. So what we wanted to do was talk about our proposed project and give you a little more details on the overview. So the industry standard for elevator ranges from 15 to 20 years old. And as you can imagine, with 24-year-old equipment, we're having some challenges. So what we want to do is talk about the scope of work that we are proposing to really make the access and ease of use for people who visit the building very, very safe and efficient. So the scope of work would entail the complete replacement of the mechanical systems, which are the motor drives, the controllers, the ropes, the things that are very, very old and in dire need of replacement. And so what we're seeing because of the age, we're seeing that there is a decreased performance. As you probably see, they're coming a little slower as you're waiting. Sometimes there are loud noises. And there's really a decreased reliability with the elevator, which really it increases our risk of entrapment. So what we're proposing in this project is the scope of work is for the complete replacement of critical equipment. But the good thing is, because technology has improved, we can take advantage of current technology. There is a greater energy efficiency equipment that will actually save money and conserve less energy. And then we'll actually have increased digital communication for emergency callouts. So what I want to do is briefly walk through the timeline to give you an idea of what we're proposing. So there was a study that was completed by a consultant in 2016. And what they recommend is a timeline that would help us as building owners to address the age infrastructure before it really reaches its estimated useful life. So for us, the timeline is in this fiscal year, we would work on a bid process. So the last 4 months of this fiscal year, staff would really focus attention on a bid process. But come fiscal year 17-18, the desire would be to really work on manufacturing the equipment and installing it. So as you can imagine, the elevator system is very complex and it is projected to take 2.5 years to do. So what we would do is a phased approach where we would minimize disruption to whoever visits the building. So we would have all elevators working, but we would have one elevator down for rehabilitation from the low rise, and we would have one down from the high rise so that all the elevators would be operational. So we think this is the best approach to allow people to get to their destination and allow us to rehabilitate the elevators. So with all this said, it would be targeted to be done by December 2019 if approval is received today. So why we're here today is similar to the telephone replacement project. We're in a position where the equipment is aged. We really want to be preventive in addressing the needs to rehabilitate the elevators. And this project also has been identified in the city manager's budget. So we're trying to really move forward with getting the replacements that are needed in this fiscal year. So we're here to seek your approval for the recommendations that we have before you. And the first one is that we would want to add the elevator project in spring of this year to our fiscal year 17-18 budget, because it is currently not in our CIP. Secondly, we would need your authorization to issue a solicitation so that we can really work with the most qualified vendors to really get the construction process going for next fiscal year. And then the last part is we would continue to use our funding strategy to use resources of excise tax obligation not to exceed $6 million. So I have Denise talk a little bit about our funding strategy and our not to exceed amount that we have in place.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. We're proposing to fund this project with financing backed by our excise tax bonds. We are currently working on doing a bond issuance in April of this year, and we're going to be packaging together telephones, LED lights, and communications equipment for police and fire. And so if this is approved, we will package this project with those other projects. We want to get to the market in April. There is a 73% chance that the feds will raise the rates in the summer. So we want to beat the market to get the best interest rates possible. So if this is approved, we will roll that into the complete package of an excise tax bond issuance in April.
With that, Madam Chair, are there any questions?
Vice Mayor, do you have any questions?
I do not.
And then do I have a motion?
I have a motion, but I also have a statement. One, that I was entrapped, and the second one, which was okay, because, you know, things were happening that day. I was fine in the sense of,
You were
I always
hiding
put my,
out.
I was hiding out. The other one was, the entrapment wasn't in the elevator, the entrapment was in the basement because the elevators weren't working. And so I sometimes, and this is a joke to Councilman Valenzuela, maybe this is the way we get Fit Phoenix going and we're climbing the stairs, but I totally understand the archaic system,
Moving,
moving the item.
I'll second the item. If we had known that you were trapped, we would have been on it, Councilwoman.
Yeah.
It did take us a while to get the mayor out one time. You'll remember that.
but that was deliberate.
It was a week after I became vice mayor. It was a complete coincidence.
Yeah.
Mr. Rochelle.
Mr. Rochelle?
Good morning, Madam Chair and fellow members of the Transit Infrastructure Meeting. I have one short comment, and the comment is I was just in the elevators over at 302, and the buttons don't light up. And for people that are visually impaired, they need the buttons lit up before they get into the elevators so they can see what floors they're going to. So I recommend highly, when you put in your new technology, that the buttons be lit in advance when you come in so you can see them if you're visually impaired. And even people like me that are now totally blind, it helps guide us towards the right area of buttons, because most of us can still see a little light. Thank you very much, and have a blessed day.
Thank you. Wonderful suggestions, and I'm see they're all shaking their heads. Yes, we will be sure to incorporate that. So thank you, Marvin. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The Interstate 10, I-17 Master Plan update.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, thank you, Madam Chair, for asking that this item be on the agenda for discussion. We have guests today from Maricopa Association of Governments, Bob Hazlitt, who's the Maricopa Association of Governments Senior Engineer Manager, and Amy St. Peter, who is the MAG Assistant Director. Along with them are Tom Remus, our Freeway Coordination Manager, and Ray Dobalina, our Street Transportation Director. I will turn it over to Tom to introduce the item.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. As Maria stated, I'm Tom Remus, the city's Freeway Coordination Manager. Today, we're providing a presentation on the Interstate 10, Interstate 17 Spine Corridor Master Plan. Last time we were before the City Council subcommittee was back in January of 2015. So we're back today to give you more information about where we're at. MAG and the Federal Highway Administration and ADOT initiated this study to develop a long-term vision of I-10 and I-17 through the year 2040. This 31-mile corridor is almost entirely in the city of Phoenix, and that's why it's so important to us to hear feedback from our residents. This study also looks at not just the freeway, but the traffic moving over the freeway. It also incorporates public transit needs, bicyclist needs, and pedestrian needs. And with that, I should note that the recommendation also incorporates the city's Phoenix Bike Plan into it. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy St. Peter, the MAG Assistant Director. She'll give you an update on the project, talk about the public meetings that were just held in January, and then Bob will go through the process and also talk about next steps. With that, Amy.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tom, and thank you so much to you for having us here. This project is particularly important to us. I think it's vital for the region, and it's really moving forward because of the partnerships. So we are thankful for it, and we greatly value the partnership that we do have with the City of Phoenix. As elected officials, you're providing the leadership, and your staff are also helping significantly with their expertise on this project. We have been conducting a significant amount of outreach since our last presentation to you. We've received more than 6,000 comments actually on this project. Just in the last month, again, thanks to your assistance with your city council outreach, your social media, the regular media outlets, your offices, you helped us to bring out 250 people to 4 public meetings just in the last month. That's significant, and that's a mark increase from what we have seen before. So thank you so much for your support on that. It's critical to get the input from the community because we want to minimize any negative impacts to the community with this project, both in terms of the design and then in the implementation and the construction following that. So we are carefully evaluating all of those different comments and all of the different opportunities that are presented with this very important project. We're applying our technical analysis to ensure that we can refine the alternatives to move forward with the best possible one. Our public comment period that is open right now actually closes this Friday, so we encourage that if there's anyone that would like to provide additional comments, to please do so through Friday. Please contact us at any time with questions. We will be moving forward with those recommendations and ultimately to adopt any changes to this project into our regional transportation plan. So with that, again, thank you so much. These partnerships are important to us, and we look forward to continuing to work with you as we design this facility. I'd like to turn it over to Bob Hazlett now. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here again to talk to the subcommittee about the project. As you can see on this particular slide, we've been at this project for some time, since 2014, and this entire planning process for Interstate 10 and Interstate 17 has been underway for some time. The corridor that we're looking at, and you'll see it in some slides here shortly with the maps, is we're looking at Interstate 10 between the split interchange, which is just southwest of Sky Harbor, all the way down to Loop 202, the Pecos Stack down in Ahwatukee. And then we're also looking at I-17 itself from the split up to what we call the North Stack at Loop 101. As Tom had stated, that's a 31-mile corridor, and we've been looking at it as one corridor because it serves as what we call the central nervous system to the entire freeway network. We call it the spine because roughly 40% of all daily freeway travel happens on some part of that corridor. Now, when I presented last time in January of 15, we were just launching our first public process, and in that public process, we talked to a lot of folks and tried to identify what are some of the key issues to this entire corridor. As I'd stated before, it's been under study for some time. There were varying proposals for some very wide stretches of freeway, as many as 25 lanes in some part. And we kind of stepped back from that and kind of said, what is this and how does this affect the community and where do we look at this? And so we looked at a number of different issues that were affecting this corridor to try to help us figure out what the recommendations would be this corridor master plan. The first of those issues was the aging infrastructure. This was a picture taken on I-17 when it was flooded during a monsoon storm. In fact, it's at Indian School Road, just happened last year, in fact. And so aging infrastructure was one of the big things that we looked at, and so modernizing this corridor became extremely important to us. There are 4 different places where the light rail is going to cross Interstate 17 itself, and all of those locations carry different implications to the freeway flow as well as to how people can get back and forth across the freeway. And so we took a look at all of those different corridors and all those different crossings, the 4 different locations that have been identified to make certain that we accommodated those as best as possible. As Tom had stated, planning for bicyclists and pedestrians was also important. One of the biggest comments that we received from a lot of folks back in 2015 is that a lot of folks felt it was very difficult to get back and forth across the freeway, that it was kind of like a great barrier. And so what we did is that we looked not only at the Phoenix bike plan, but we also looked at other opportunities that we could have to be able to get people back and forth across the freeway. And one of the things that was also very important to us as we were doing an aha moment is that there are more people that actually cross the freeway on a daily basis than actually use the freeway on a daily basis. And that really prompted us to take a look at all 31 different traffic interchanges to come up with recommendations for those locations. The other thing that was also has been emerging has been technology. This is the Google car. Again, driverless vehicles is something that's probably in our future, and we want to make certain that whatever recommendations we have for this corridor can accommodate that technology. The other thing that's also very important is that it's a very constrained corridor. This is the stack interchange you see right here, but as you can see, it's hemmed in by all these businesses and residents that live along the corridor. And those businesses are extremely important to the economy, and so whatever recommendations we had, we wanted to try to make certain that we could do it within the existing bits of right-of-way that we have for both corridors as best as we possibly could. And then last, certainly, is the increasing demand that we have in the corridor. Even though a lot of folks say it's plugged up today, well, there's another about 2.5 million people that are going to move here to the valley. And so when that happens, that means that people are going to be using that freeway corridor. And so the demand is just going to get that much greater. And so we wanted to make certain that we could accommodate the best demand, or the increasing demand, as reasonably as possible. And so when we started this whole process, we met in a workshop, and representatives from the City of Phoenix, the Streets Transportation Department, Public Transportation, as well as Aviation were all present at workshops that we had, and we came up with 349 different ideas of what we could do to this corridor. Now, 349 ideas is a lot, and so what we had to do is we had to kind of work through different bits of evaluation criteria and different alternatives to come up with our primary recommendation, and that's what we presented to the public in meetings over the last few weeks. And so let me just go ahead and just whittle down to what the recommendations are. The biggest one is to modernize the interstates to the current design standards. As was just in your previous presentation about elevators, the same thing applies to freeways. They need to be modernized from time to time to reflect current thinking on how things are designed. And when we do that, we also improve upon the safety of the corridor, as well as improve upon the ability of people to be able to move up and down the corridor. The next recommendation we have is to at least add a minimum of 1 lane throughout the entire corridor. Now, throughout this corridor, a lot of folks would say, well, should that be a general purpose lane, or should it be a lane mainly for what we call managed capacity, which would be for HOV and also for public transportation. And our recommendation at this point is to really do what we can to improve upon the managed capacity so that we can have more reliable transportation. When you put in these managed lanes, what you're able to do is you're able to ensure people the reliability that if they want to go, for example, from the north stack down the stack every day, that they should be able to get that at a certain travel time. And so that was a very big recommendation that we had. As I also stated too, with the actual interchanges themselves, we looked at all 31 of them, and the recommendation is to improve or reconstruct about 24 of them. The other 7 are in decent shape to last us to the 2040 horizon. But the other thing that we also have, and you see that listed up there in blue, is that we want to add 5 what we call DHOVs, or direct HOV ramps. Those ramps are already in existence today. For example, if you're outbound on Interstate 10, if you're in the HOV lane and you want to go to the HOV lane on Highway 60, you can do that through what we call a DHOV ramp. And we want to add about another 5 of those to our traffic interchange or throughout the corridor, so that public transportation and shared rides don't have to weave all the way across traffic to be able to get off, that they can actually have their own way and their own access to be able to get back and forth. And then the last thing, as we talked about, is enhancing bike and pedestrian connections at about 20 locations, including 9 new structures. Right now, I know of about only two areas where we really have really good bike and ped connections across the interstate. And so what we're recommending here is to increase that up to 90. What this all points to is a master plan package of about 50 improvements throughout the corridor that would happen over time, so that we could improve the ability of traffic to use the corridor. Now, these next series of slides were from our public displays. I just want to walk through them quickly, just to kind of help you just see some of the recommendations that we had. One of the biggest recommendations I stated is to reconstruct traffic interchanges. Well, the I-10 and State Route 143 interchange near the Broadway curve, as you can see illustrated right there, is an interchange of significant importance, and particularly for folks that are southbound on 143 wanting to go outbound on Interstate 10, they have to use that loop ramp. It's out of date, and so we've made recommendations there to significantly improve that facility. In fact, there's a near-term improvement strategy that's identified that we're trying to minimize what we call traffic weaves, where, for example, if you're inbound on Interstate 10 right now and you got traffic coming in on Highway 60 and people are wanting to get off on Highway 143, they have to physically cross over each other. Those weaves are what causes our congestion, and so we're looking at a significant improvement to there with what we call collector-distributor lanes to help out that particular interchange. The next thing that we looked at was trying to look at a couple of these corridors, and came up with a recommendation for an interchange concept that's been around for a long time. It just hasn't been applied here in Arizona, and that's called the platform diamond. We found that this type of interchange is very effective in terms of helping by providing another deck for through traffic to get through. We particularly looked at this in a couple of locations, including potential crossings where the light rail might happen, and that could happen on that top deck. And what that does is it improves the ability for folks to get back and forth. Again, as we had identified, we found that more than we got more traffic crossing over the freeway than actually using the freeway, and so it was extremely important to us to make certain that we could find the right types of interchange improvements that could help us out. Technology enhancements, I just briefly touched about that and trying to work through that, but this graphic is from the Volpe Center, which is part of the Federal Highway Administration. We wanted to make certain that, that we can have those in-vehicle communication back and forth so that those vehicles can actually use the facility. The technology is emerging. We don't know what where it's going. All we tried to do here was to do whatever we could to make certain that we wouldn't preclude this technology from emerging on the particular corridor. Then I talked again about what a direct HOV ramp is. This is one that's right here at 3rd Street and I-10, and then this is another one that's in the Pecos stack. And again, these types of facilities are extremely critical to helping out with public transportation and shared rides for people that use the HOV lanes, and we wanted to make certain that those were available throughout the corridor. As I had stated, we're also working on the light rail transit crossings and making certain that those can happen in a seamless manner. One of the big things that we have is that if we're going to do some improvements on the interstate, and we're also going to want to get the light rail across the interstate, we want to try to make certain we time those so that we don't miss funding opportunities, and also too that we can minimize construction impacts. And so we've identified that and started working with both Valley Metro, Phoenix Transportation, and Federal Highway and ADOT to make certain that those things are happening in a timely manner. And then lastly, but certainly not least, the bicycle pedestrian crossings are also extremely important. This is the one that's at 63rd Avenue up in Glendale, but if you can imagine another nine of these types of structures being built on the corridor, it can really help to bring communities back together and get people back and forth across the freeway. And so what are why did we make these recommendations? Well, they respond to the priorities that the public had told us about back in 2015. And the biggest thing that we found is that it really does improve commute by modernizing the interstate and expanding the managed capacity. The big thing that a lot of folks asked us were for more travel choices, and we tried to make certain that with the managed capacity in particular, that we would be able to provide those. Protecting the environment was another important thing, and the biggest thing that we did what we could was to keep everything within the rights of way wherever possible, and to try and minimize those points. But we also did identify ways to address the flooding issues on Interstate 17, and also using congestion management technology wherever possible to improve traffic flow to protect the environment. Again, as I'd stated, talk about increasing connections and promoting neighborhoods by improving 24 of those 31 interchanges and 5 new direct HOV ramps, and better ramp metering and bike ped improvements. We think that really helps do that. And then the last thing is that we were trying our best not to take businesses wherever possible because that's commerce. We want to make certain that those are protected as best as we could, keep the costs down, and emphasize jobs. And so, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, this completes my presentation. Again, our public comment period closes this Friday. spine.azmag.gov is our web address. And you don't have to put the www in front of it, just spine.azmag.gov, and that'll take you right to our address. And so I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions? I have, once Friday passes, then what's the next step or two?
Okay, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, after this works out, we already have programmed in the regional transportation plan approximately $1.5 billion to construct a good part of this corridor master plan. And so what this would do is it would set in motion a lot of what we call the near term or the most important implementation strategies that have to be done in the corridor up front. And so it kind of gets that in motion. The rest of this, as we've stated, it's a 2040 horizon, and so we would probably look to future funding opportunities to take care of the remaining parts of the corridor.
Do you have a priority list of what projects are going to come first?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, yes, we do. We've started sharing that with members of your staff, and we're going to be working through that with our Regional Council and Transportation Policy Committee so that they have an understanding of the things that we are looking at. Some of the big things are, again, fixing some stuff around the Broadway curve, and then also, too, the reconstruction of I-17 between the split and the stack is also a very important priority, too, because of the aging infrastructure that we have in that particular part of the corridor.
Anyone have?
I have one question. Where it said expands management capacity, it was on one of the slides.
Yeah, let me.
It was
yeah.
talking about adding a lane. In my understanding, we would not be adding a lane. We're going to manage it differently, or we are going to add a lane.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Pastor, we would actually physically add a lane for the managed capacity. That's what this recommendation is. And as we stated, it's adding the minimum of one lane throughout the corridor, and where there would be managed lanes, it would be a brand new lane.
Okay.
Pardon me, go ahead.
I was just curious only because it's already at max and where you were going to get that added lane. So
We found
Thank you.
room.
I'm sure you have.
Any other questions?
I have a follow-up question on that.
Go ahead.
You did mention that you were going to mostly be within the right-of-way and existing easements. Is there anywhere where we as City Council should be prepared that there might be new property acquisition?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor Gallego, yes, there are a couple of areas where we would have to expand out into the freeway corridor, and yes, there are some sections of Interstate 17 that would warrant it. It'd be north of the stack. At this time, we don't know exactly how much of that would be taken because ADOT has to do their particular studies. But based on our initial look at everything, we again did our best to try and keep it so that if there is any takings, it's usually anything that's really fronting the freeway, nothing really beyond that.
Mr. Reed?
Wonderful. And then I represent, Madam Chair, can I ask one more question? Sure. Or a few more?
No. Go ahead.
So I represent some of the people who live south of the portion that goes from east to west and who are very interested in traffic flowing under the freeway. You mentioned that more people cross it than use it. And we have some, like 19th Avenue, where people will be stuck at the light for 4 signals. So I saw and was very excited that we're going to be adding a lane of traffic. And then when you spoke to us last, you talked a lot about better timing. So could you help me articulate to my constituents sort of how much one lane of traffic will make a difference in their north-south commute?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor Gallego, it's pretty dramatic what an additional lane can make to this corridor. As you had talked about, 19th Avenue is one of those areas, and one of the recommendations that we have is to kind of change up some of the ramping in that particular area so that the demand can be accommodated much better and allow people to safely get on and off the freeway a little bit easier there at 19th Avenue. That was one of our big locations that we looked at, and so again, we looked at changing up some of the ramping in that area, and by adding the additional lane, it just provides much more area for people to have better maneuverability so that they can safely move up and down the corridor. Another thing I would also suggest is again, I don't want to dismiss the whole modernizing of the freeway corridor and bringing in current design standards that have been reflected for better safety and for better operation of the corridor.
Wonderful. And how do you coordinate traffic with our construction? We're going to be building the 202, and that will impact some of the folks who are also impacted by this project. How do we coordinate to minimize disruptions?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor Gallego, that's an excellent question. And in fact, we had a session right before Thanksgiving. There was about 31 people that gathered at MAG representing ADOT, Federal Highway, and MAG to take a look at that very thing because, again, as you can imagine, with this corridor and with the construction of Loop 202 South Mountain, there's a whole host of other projects that have been identified on Loop 101 in particular. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to try and choreograph that so that we didn't have a lot of construction all happening at the same time. And so this is kind of a first time in a long time, but we, in addition to the projects that are identified here in the corridor master plan, we went ahead and added to that all the other projects that are happening throughout the valley. And now we have a roadmap taking us out to about 2040 right now that at least identifies when construction happened. And the biggest thing that we were working on and making certain that we could address was that we didn't want to have all this construction happening at one time. We didn't want there to be a banner out that says, "Welcome to Phoenix, everybody under construction." We wanted to make certain that we spread that out so that we didn't have everything focused in one spot.
And I think it's wonderful that we are doing so much investment. It speaks well to Phoenix and to Arizona that we are improving our infrastructure. I think this will fix up we had all of the bridges that were lowest ranked in Phoenix will be helped by this project. So that is good news for us, and very glad that we're investing. But I think we can if we coordinate, we will have a better impact on local traffic. When you last spoke to us, you gave us a little bit of an update about what you were doing near Sky Harbor Airport, and I think you're looking at most of the people on the airport subcommittee, so could you give us an update on where you landed?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor Gallego, right now with Sky Harbor Airport, there is an effort that's underway right now to take a look at where Interstate 10 meets Sky Harbor on the west side of the airport to improve that ability and also be able to account for some of the new construction that's being identified, as well as the extension of SkyTrain over to the car rental facility. But we also know that there's been some discussion of some other activities around the airport. And so there's about 60 people right now that are are meeting right now representing various departments inside the city of Phoenix, but also FAA, FHWA, ADOT, MAG, and a whole host of other agencies to try and make certain that type of construction happens so that people can easily get to and from the to the airport as best as possible, especially with some of the future activities the airport has planned.
Wonderful. And then I have a question you'll probably only get at a city council, but it is Graffiti Free Phoenix Month right now. Have we learned anything since we last built the freeway about better prevention of graffiti through good design?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor Gallego, I know that the Arizona Department of Transportation, which oversees the freeways because they are their system, I know that they're doing everything they can to work with graffiti prevention. I know that one of the things that ADOT is working very hard on is especially with overhead signs, trying to make certain that we don't get taggers on those, because that not only hurts the sign itself, but it also hurts the motoring public because it could cover up vital and important information. And I know that they're doing everything that they can. In fact, I know they put up these shields right now to help prevent that. It was a very easy fix from what I understand, but they're now trying to put that up on different areas so that they can help prevent that type of tagging to happen with the signs.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Included in this planning, are you going to do beautification artwork along? I'm always jealous. I go through Scottsdale and admire what they have, and then you come down I-17 to the concrete tunnel.
Well, Madam Chair, you make an excellent point, and aesthetics are a very important part of our freeway program. I will say this about I-17 is that it is the oldest corridor. It dates back, in fact, it dates back before it was even I-17. It was Arizona State Route 69, before the interstate system was even identified by President Eisenhower. And so the corridor has been around for a while, and yes, there are a lot of folks that have talked to us about that maybe it's been neglected a little bit too long. And so as part of this, any type of reconstruction of that facility, I'm certain aesthetics would play a major part of this to help make the corridor not just easy for folks to get up and down, but also a little bit more pleasing on the eyes instead of looking at the concrete walls.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I just wanted to mention and assure you that with a number of freeway projects that are taking place right now and in the future, that we are working to have good coordination within the city of Phoenix. So looking at the spine study, we've brought in the economic development director to look at that. So as you look at properties that might be impacted, so that department's looking ahead to see what they could do to help with that once we have some solid plans. We have neighborhood services involved, so they could start thinking about outreach to neighborhoods as this plan moves forward, and how we make sure to bring them into the discussions on whether it's pedestrian bridges or aesthetics. So we're trying to bring in all areas of the city to make sure that they're hearing about this and that we're ahead of the curve before these projects get started.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Well, we thank you very much for coming over and giving us an update, and look forward to seeing this get underway. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Next is call to the public. Do we have any additional cards? We do not. We future agenda items. We have a list. Is there anything you want to add?
No.
All right. right, we have a busy agenda ahead of us, and it is full, so
Looks
thank you for
full.
not adding. Then we are adjourned.